Everybody hear me? Shall we start? Hello. Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, the third day, the third session. This session is uh, for condition monitoring of composite drive shaft, given by Dr. G. Rajesh Kumar, Associate Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, PhD Institute of Technology and Applied Research, Coimbatore. I will introduce him briefly. Dr. Rajesh Kumar obtained his Bachelor of Engineering degree from Sri Ramakrishna Institute of Technology, Coimbatore in the year 2010 and his Master of Engineering at Kongu Engineering College in the year 2012 with a gold medal. He received his PhD in Mechanical Engineering from Anna University during the year 2017. He is at PhD HITEC since 2017 and he is presently an Associate Professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering. He is presently carrying out research in polymer and metal matrix composites, mechanism of needle insertion in soft materials, tribology and vibrations. He has published more than 60 papers in peer-reviewed international journals and conference proceedings. He has edited a book for Springer titled Advances in Materials Design and Manufacturing for Sustainable Environment. I welcome you, sir, for this faculty development program. Now I hand over the session to Dr. Rajesh Kumar. Over to Rajesh Kumar, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks for your nice introduction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So, at the outset, I would like to thank the coordinators of this program and Department of Mechanical Engineering, Kongu Engineering College, for giving me this opportunity to share my views in using composite materials for drive shaft applications. So, joining with the coordinator, I welcome all the participants to this session on condition monitoring of composite drive shafts. So these are the contents of my presentation. So just I am going to brief you about the importance of drive shaft and then composite materials, followed by basics of vibration and then condition monitoring importance and its objectives, critical speed of a drive shaft and then cracks appears in the drive shaft and then tribological aspects of a drive shaft, and finally I'm going to conclude. Okay. So, as you know, the drive shaft is a rotating machine element which is used to transfer power from source to destination. So, normally these drive shafts are employed in machine tool applications, so as well as in the automobiles. So, if the drive shaft is employed in the machine tool application, then it transfers power from the electric motor to main spindle. If the drive shaft is employed in automobiles, then it transfers power from engine to the wheels via gearbox, clutches, and then differential, whatever it may be. But ultimately, it will transfer power from engine to the wheel. So in this figure, you can see the different parts associated with the drive shaft and also a condition monitoring system employed to monitor various parameters of a drive shaft. Okay, and then basic introduction about the composite materials. As you know, the composite materials are made by combining two or more materials. Those materials are categorized as either reinforcements and then matrix. Okay. Now you can see this figure. So in this figure, you can see the reinforcement and then matrix. Okay. So if we embedded this reinforcement into this matrix, we can get the composite material. Now, while reading the definition of composite materials and alloys, we may get confused, right? Because both the definitions are more or less similar. Even we can define composite as combination of two or more material, and similarly the alloy as combination of two or more materials. But the major difference is it is based on the microstructural characterization. For example, if we make some part by using some alloys, okay, maybe you can assume it as aluminum and then copper. So in the final product, you can't able to differentiate the two materials that we have used to make this product. So the whole product looks like it is made up of a single material. But whereas in the case of composite material, here you can see both the reinforcement and matrix as a separate one. Here you can look the reinforcements which is embedded in the matrix and matrix as a separate one. So this is the basic difference between alloys and then composites. Okay. And then here you can find these reinforcements are a discontinuous phase, so which is reinforced in a random manner, but whereas the matrix is a continuous phase. Here this discontinuous phase reinforcements are much harder and stronger than that of the matrix. So therefore the reinforcement materials are considered as a load carrying member, whereas this matrix material which is used to maintain the location of the reinforcement and it acts as a protecting medium from the external damages. So these are the basic aspects of constitutions of a composite materials. And then as coming to the classifications of a composite, the composites are broadly classified into polymer matrix composites, metal matrix composites, and then ceramic matrix composites. So these are named with the help of the material, continuous material that we have used. If you take the case of polymer matrix composites, the polymers would be the continuous medium. And if you take the metal matrix, then metal is the continuous medium. Similarly in CMCs, ceramics is a continuous medium. So in this session, I am going to concentrate only on the metal matrix composites, because the polymer matrix composites are not widely used to make a drive shafts, because these polymer matrix have very low strength, okay, when compared to the metal matrix composites. So for high-end applications, people normally use it to prefer the metal matrix and then ceramic matrix composites. Especially these ceramic composites are employed for high temperature applications. As you know, these ceramic materials have the ability to withstand high temperatures. So in the rockets and then aerospace applications, ceramics are widely used. But whereas in the machine tool and then automobile applications, metal matrix composites are widely used. Okay. And then, so why metal matrix composites are preferred for automobile applications? Because the reason is very simple. Normally in the olden days, the people used conventional materials like steel and then iron to make the drive shafts. Okay. But later on, once the material science field get evolved, people started using the composite material. So these metal matrix composite material offer better properties when compared to the conventional materials, and also the weight is very much minimum. Okay, so that means these metal matrix composites have high stiffness to weight ratio. Okay, so that's why people started using metal matrix composites in machine tool and then automobile applications. So why we want to reduce the weight? So normally while designing an automobile, what the design engineer does is, so he will tries to reduce the weight of the automobile ultimately, because in order to get a positive impact on the fuel economy and then performances, and to reduce the noise and vibration harshness. Okay. And then the driveline of an automobile system can be targeted for possible weight reduction, because the driveline is not a single unit, right? So the driveline has multiple number of components. So if we reduce the weight of a single component, then it will get reflected in the other component as well, so that the entire driveline weight can be reduced. So that is the why the people are targeting to reduce the weight of the driveline systems. And then this can be done through the use of composite materials, as I already said. And then why people prefer to use aluminum based metal matrix composites? Because so many types of metal matrix are available, like titanium, zinc, and then copper, tungsten, molybdenum. So many metal matrix are available. Then why people used to prefer aluminum? Because the wide variety of grades of aluminum are available, starting from LM6, LM12 like that. And in 6000 series itself, we are having 100 grades of aluminum, and then aluminum 7000 series is also there. So due to that availability of huge variety, the people may started doing their research on the aluminum based metal matrix composites. And one more advantages of using aluminum is it is easy to cast. So we can cast it into any intricate shapes. So that means we can cast it into any complicated shapes. And moreover, this aluminum has a disadvantage, like it has a poor strength if we use a raw aluminum. And moreover, it won't withstand high temperature, and also has very poor resistance towards the wear. So therefore, we can't able to use a raw aluminum for a machine tool applications or automobile applications. So therefore, what the people normally used to do is they will reinforce some kind of hard materials into the aluminum to prepare a aluminum based metal matrix composites, which will give a better properties when compared to the normal conventional as well as the raw aluminum. So because of synergistic effect between the fibers and then matrix material. So that's why people started using aluminum metal matrix composites for these applications. So here you can see aluminum alloy possesses a good mechanical and then physical property. So that's why they are preferring for automobile. So however, it exhibit extremely poor resistance to galling. So galling is nothing but the wear property. So this aluminum has very poor resistance towards the wear. So not only wear, it also have poor resistance towards temperature, and then it also has poor fatigue resistance, everything. So that's why these aluminums are reinforced with solid lubricants, hard ceramic particles, or short fibers or viscose, whatever it may be. So only thing is the strength of the reinforcement should be higher than that of the aluminum. So otherwise there is no meaning in using the reinforcement for aluminum. And one more thing is, normally people prefer to use these hard ceramic particles, probably the silicon carbide or the boron carbide. So these are the two ceramic particles that the people may use frequently because it offers very excellent tribological, mechanical and vibrational properties. Okay, and there is one disadvantages exist while using these ceramic particles. The main disadvantages is, as you know, the aluminum is a ductile material. Once if you embedded it with the ceramic particles, it is converted into the brittle nature. So it is one of the major drawback in using silicon carbide or boron carbide. But we have to compromise something in order to get the better properties, right? So therefore, what the people normally used to do is they will use one more reinforcement, that is the secondary reinforcement, like soft materials like molybdenum, etc. So if you use a soft material additionally, so it will maintain the ductile nature of the pure aluminum. Okay, so normally it is so called the hybrid composites, right? Because we are using a aluminum matrix and we are using a primary reinforcements as ceramic particles and the secondary reinforcements as the soft materials. So therefore the resulting composites may have two types of reinforcements. So therefore it is called as a hybrid composite materials. Because if we won't use a soft material means, then the resulting composite possesses very high brittle nature. So once if the composite shaft is subjected to a fatigue, what will happen after a certain period of time, some crack will form. Okay, so if it is brittle in nature, then what will happen? The crack will propagate like anything. So therefore it won't give sufficient time to rectify those problems. So sudden failure may occur it may cause a very big damage. So either to the machine or to the operators as well. Okay. So that is the drawback in using ceramic particles. Let us see an introduction about the vibration. Yes, you know, so any motion which repeats itself after an interval of time is said to be the vibration. So here you can see a spring mass system, a spring of stiffness K and a mass M. So if we hold this mass and if you pull down and finally you just leave the mass, then what will happen? Then the system will vibrate in a vertical manner. So this type of oscillating motion is called as the vibration. Normally, simple pendulum is one of the best example to define the vibration. And I am going to brief you about three important classifications of a vibration which will be considered in our applications. So the first thing is free vibration. So as I already said, once if we pull the mass down and if we left it, what will happen? It will vibrate on its own. So this is called as the free vibration, and then the frequency associated with this free vibration is called as natural frequency. I hope many of you might be knowing this term, natural frequency. So this natural frequency is given by root of K by M. So that is stiffness to mass ratio. Okay. So normally it is expressed in terms of hertz or cycles per second. Okay. So next important classification is forced vibration. So this forced vibration is under the influence of external force. That means we have to supply a continuous force so that the system will get vibrated. Normally in the machine tool applications or automobile applications, we are supplying a continuous power so that system will get vibrated until it is come into shutdown position, right? So that is comes under the category of forced vibration, and the frequency obtained in this forced vibration is the forcing frequency. So normally it is termed as FH. So that is harmonic frequency. Okay. So there is a one more thing called resonance. Okay. So whenever the natural frequency equals the forcing frequency, the condition of resonance will occur. Okay. So we should be cautious that none of the system should be operated in this resonance condition, because at the resonance condition, the probability of failure of a system or a machine is more. So therefore, we should operate the machine under the resonance condition. Okay, so therefore we should keep this natural frequency as high as possible when compared to the forcing frequency. So then only the resonance condition could be avoided, so that the machine can be, or the system can be operated in a safer zone. Okay, and then next thing is torsional vibration. So it is with respect to the drive shaft. So the torsional vibration is defined as when the element get twisted and untwisted alternately, then we can say it is under the torsional vibration category. Here you can see. So here you can see a drive shaft. Sorry. Here you can see this crankshaft is getting twisted and untwisted alternately. So this type of vibration is called as the torsional vibration. So almost all the rotational component may be subjected to this torsional vibration. Okay, so next thing is effect of composite parameters on vibration behavior. So normally the vibration characteristics of a composite materials are influenced by various parameters of composites. So that is, the first one is properties of matrix and then reinforcements. So obviously it will be the major factor which affects the vibration behavior, because the material that we are using for matrix and then reinforcement should have enough damping property. So enough damping property. If anyone, either matrix or reinforcement, does not have a damping property, means what will happen? Ultimately, it will affect the vibration behavior of the composites. So next thing is the orientation of reinforcements. So orientation in the sense the reinforcements are embedded into the matrix either as a random orientation or angular orientation. Okay. So normally in the short fibers are embedded in the form of random orientation, whereas the long fibers are embedded in angular orientation format. So the angular in the sense it may be of 0 degree or transverse 90 degree or 45 degree, 30 degree, whatever it may be. Okay, so this orientation also affects the vibration behavior, and moreover, for some applications, the people may use woven fabric, right? So these woven fabric are normally called as bidirectional mat. So that means the woven fabric will be in the direction of 0 degree as well as 90 degree. So therefore, it is called as a bidirectional reinforcement mat. So it also significantly affects the vibration behavior of the composites. And finally, bonding between the components of composites. So this is the very important point that we must to take care. If the bonding between the reinforcement and the matrix is not good, then the force is not transmitted from matrix to the reinforcement effectively. Ultimately, what will happen? The composite will get failed. So therefore, the bonding should be good. Normally, this bonding will be good in the case of synthetic reinforcements and synthetic resins as well. So if we use some kind of natural materials into either polymer matrix or a metal matrix, so some kind of debonding may happen. So therefore, we have to take care while using such kind of reinforcements in the composite materials. Okay, so next thing, condition monitoring. So the condition monitoring refers to monitor the parameters of a machine or a system. So why we want to monitor a parameter of a system? Because if we want to operate a machine under safer condition, then we want to measure various parameters in a system. Because if some parameter may get varied, or if the pattern of signal is getting varied, then it is an indicative of developing a fault. So if we won't measure a parameter of a various parameters of a machine, means what will happen? We can't able to identify whether any fault is happening in the machine or not. So finally, what will happen? So it will made a huge loss. Okay, it may be the huge loss to the machine or huge loss to the human, whatever it may be. So that's why we have to monitor various parameters while the machine is under running condition. Okay. So here also in this image you can see, so various persons are monitoring different parameters for a fan motor. So like motor current, lube oil, thermal aspects, and then performance monitoring, pressure, vibration, etc. So like this, every application have some critical parameters. We have to monitor that critical parameters. So then only we can operate the machine in a safer mode. So otherwise it may cause a huge damage. And then normally this it is a major component of a predictive maintenance. As you know, the difference between predictive, preventive, and then breakdown maintenance, right? So it is a major component of predictive maintenance because we are predict the fault well in advance so that we can avoid a huge damage. Okay. So next thing is the objective of condition monitoring. So why we want to do a condition monitoring of a drive shaft or any other mechanical systems? The thing is to monitor a shaft speed and variation in the natural frequency. Because why we want to monitor the shaft speed means we want to ensure whether the shaft is rotating at a speed which is less than the critical speed of a shaft, so that it will working in a safer environment, and also variation in the natural frequency. If the natural frequency value is getting decreased, means again it is an indicative of a fault. Okay, so that's why we have to measure the shaft speed and as well as the natural frequency frequently. And the next thing is to detect the presence of transverse cracks. So normally these transverse cracks may happen in a drive shaft due to fatigue loads. So, and the next thing is to predict the failure of shafts due to wear. Okay, so this comes under the category of typological aspects. So next thing is critical speed of a shaft. So as I already said, the resonance condition will occur whenever the forcing frequency and natural frequency becomes same. Okay, so when the shaft is being rotated, so if the natural frequency of the shaft and the forcing frequency of the shaft will get coincide, then that speed is called as the critical speed. So that means we should not rotate the shaft beyond this critical speed. Okay, so this is a caution point we can say. So we should operate the shaft within this critical speed. So once the shaft reaches this critical speed, what will happen is the amplitude of vibration becomes excessively large. Okay, for example, if you take an amplitude, so under normal running condition, if an amplitude is like this, so once if the shaft reaches the critical parameter or the critical speed, then its amplitude will be much higher when compared to the normal conditions. So normally it may be from 10 to 20 or 40 times higher than the normal amplitude. So therefore we have to take care whether our drive shaft is rotating under this critical speed or not. So normally this critical speed happens means then the amplitude will be getting increased in the transverse direction, not in the axial direction. So that you can observe in this diagram. Okay, so here you can see a shaft. This black color is a shaft, and then here you can see two fixed ends. So this green color represents the fixed ends. Okay, so and then you can find an axis over here, and then you can find this red color component is called as a disc. So it have its own mass, and then we are having three important points, O, S, and then G. So here the point O is lying along this axis of rotation, and then point S corresponds to the geometric center. That is, this point is located exactly at the center of this black color shaft. And then G represents the center of mass, so which is deviated from this point S towards right. And one more thing, please note this heavy side. Why it is named as heavy side means because this is the place wherein the center of mass is acting. So therefore it is called as the heavy side. So that means the entire load will act at that point G. Okay. Now assume the case if the shaft is getting rotated from its initial position. So that means what will happen? We may get two types of forces. The first force is the centrifugal force, and the second force is the restoring force. So these are the two forces which may occur when the shaft carrying a disc starts rotating. So this centrifugal force may act towards outside of the axis. Okay, and whereas the restored force is acting towards inside or outward or inward, whatever it may be. Okay, so these are the two opposite forces which are acting when the shaft starts rotating. Okay, so this centrifugal force may act through the point G, that is center of mass, and then as you know, mr square, centrifugal force is nothing but the mr square. So the mass will play a vital role in deciding the centrifugal force. And restoring force, which is acting inside, which is acting through the point S. So that is the geometric center. Okay, and the two frequencies involved in this process is omega c is nothing but the critical speed, critical angular speed, and one more thing is omega, so which is an uniform angular velocity. So uniform angular velocity in the sense there will not be any vibration incurred in the rotating shafts. So these are the two. So again I am repeating, omega is the ordinary natural frequency, or we can say it is an uniform angular velocity, and omega c represents the critical speed. Now three possible conditions may occur, right? The first thing is the omega will be equal to the critical speed omega c. This is the first case. And the second case that may happen is omega which is less than omega c, and the third case that may happen is omega greater than omega c. So these are the three possible cases that may happen when the shaft along with the disc starts rotating. So if omega equal to omega c means, what is the condition? Obviously it is a resonance condition. So resonance condition. At this resonance condition, the amplitude ratio. So the amplitude ratio is nothing but R by E. So here R is the distance from the center of the axis to geometric center S. So that is the distance of OS is the R, and eccentric is nothing but the distance from geometric center to the center of mass SG. So this is the amplitude ratio. This amplitude ratio may become infinite. So this amplitude ratio become infinite means what will happen? So the amplitude may get increased like anything. So when the amplitude get increases, what will happen? So ultimately the vibration will be more. So therefore the probability of failure will be more, as I already said. Okay, and then second case, when omega less than omega c, now the amplitude ratio R by E is a positive one. Okay, so in this case, the point S lies between O and G. As in the case of the figure, you can see point S is lies between O and then G. So that means some kind of displacement is happened from the axis of rotation. So once the displacement happen in the transverse direction means definitely there will be some vibration, but it is an acceptable one. So therefore it won't affect the performance of the system. Whereas in the last case, when the omega greater than omega c, then the amplitude ratio R by E is negative. So in this case, the point G, that is the center of mass, lies between O and S. So therefore here you can see this point, the point G will be located. So at this condition, what we can infer is this heavy side is coming very nearer to the axis of rotation. So that means if the heavy side is too far from the axis of rotation means automatically the vibration value is getting increased. But whereas if the heavy side is very nearer to the axis of rotation means obviously the vibration will be very, very minimum. So vibration is very, very minimum. So therefore we can say when the omega is greater than the omega c, so that is the natural frequency is greater than the critical frequency. So the system won't have that much vibrations. So therefore we can operate this in a safer condition. Okay. So these are the three conditions that you have to keep in mind. Okay, so next let us see how this critical speed of a shaft has been obtained. So we can use an analytical formula like NC. So NC represents the critical speed, so it is given by this relation. So here the variables are length of shaft, and then here Young's modulus and density, it depends upon the material that we have used, and here R0 plus Ri represents the outer and the inner diameter of the shafts if it is a hollow one. So otherwise you can use a single radius. So this will gives you the critical speed of a shaft directly. And there is another method to determine the same critical speed of the shaft analytically is by having a value of natural frequency. So you can see this relation. So in this relation, we can able to calculate the natural frequency, and then with the help of natural frequency, we can able to determine the critical speed. So here you can find the same length of the shaft and then mass of the shaft, and then Ix represents area moment of inertia, and then E represents Young's modulus of the material. Here the important thing we have to consider is the parameter P. So here you can see NCRT1, right? So here what does this one represents is first critical speed. So if we want to calculate the first critical speed, then we have to use FNT1, right? So first critical speed means the value of P is 1. So if you want to calculate the second critical speed, that is NCRT2, then the formula is 60 into FNT2. So therefore the value of P becomes 2. So that is how we have to vary this parameter P. Okay, so once you calculate this natural frequency, you may get some value in terms of hertz or cycles per second. Okay, so if you multiply this value with 60, what will happen? You may get in terms of cycles per minute or RPM. So that is the unit of a critical speed, NCR. So this is also another analytical formula available to calculate the critical speed of a shaft. Okay, so next thing is methods to find the critical speed of a shaft. So normally people may employ three methods. So first thing is numerical method, that is FEA, and then experimental method, and another thing is analytical method. So here it is mentioned as modified TMM. So that means transfer matrix method. So transfer matrix method is there. Euler, Bernoulli, B method is there. So many analytical formulas are available. So we can use any one of them. Okay. So here you can see the results. So one research paper have mentioned the critical speed of a shaft by using three different methods. So more or less we can get the same value. So almost it ranges from 2400 to 2551 RPM. So which is in an acceptable range. So normally if anyone started doing research in this field, so that is composite drive shaft, first you can try with this FEA, because the manufacturing of a composite drive shaft is not that much easy, and also it is very expensive. So because we need to optimize the various parameters of the composites, right? So various parameters in the sense you have to optimize the weight percentage of using reinforcements. You can use 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever it may be, but you have to optimize it. Right? So if you do everything in the experiment and if you started doing optimization means, then it will consume more time as well as it is very much expensive. So therefore you can use this numerical packages to optimize the reinforcements. Then you can validate your results with the experimental one. And this analytical method is not mostly used, because in the case of composites I am saying, because if we are using the reinforcement in different orientations, right? It may be of random orientation or it may be of a bidirectional orientation, whatever it may be. Then you have to solve a very big matrix. Sometimes it may comes around 16 cross 16 or 48 cross 48 as well. It depends upon the amount or quantity of variables that you are using. So normally for a simple materials usage, we can go for analytical. So if your material is complicated, that too, if you are started using hybrid composites, then it is not advisable to use this analytical method. So at that situation, you can try with numerical and then experimental portions. And then at the same time, you may get error of more than 10% with experimental and numerical. So it should be less than 10% error. So normally you won't get 10% error. Normally it goes beyond 20% or 30%. Okay. So if that is the case, you have to ensure that you have used the appropriate procedure in the FEA packages. So again, if you get, for example, 20% of error means you have to state some assumptions. So that is some, I will put an one example. For example, if I have used the silicon carbide for in aluminum matrix means definitely it will be in a random manner, right? So if you use something in a random manner, it is very difficult to model in the FEA package, right? So therefore you have taken assumption in such a way that the silicon carbide is embedded in the matrix in a uniform manner. So that means in a simple direction. For example, if this is the composite, normally your silicon carbide will be oriented in a random manner like this. But in your assumption, you have to state that this silicon carbide will be a continuous reinforcement and it will be placed in a either 0 degree or 90 degree or 45 degree, whatever it may be. So like that, you have to state so many assumptions if you use FEA packages. So that is one of the major disadvantage in the FEA package in case of composite materials. But hopefully different versions are coming nowadays. Within another 1 or 2 days, we can able to solve all those problems, including the random orientation. Let us see. So, and another method is the experimental method, as I already said. So this is one of the experimental setup which is used to determine, or it is used to measure the critical speed of a composite shaft. So here the important thing is the RPM sensor, that is a tachometer. Okay, so which indicates the RPM. We have to monitor the speed of the shafts continuously, and we are having some kind of data acquisition system. Okay, so in order to see the pattern of vibration, etc. So it is a very simple experimental setup, like what we are doing in the whirling of shafts experiment, right? So that is the simple experimental setup. And then this is the outcome from the experimental results. Okay, so here you can see at this point the amplitude reaches its maximum position. Normally it may be around 0.27. So if you draw a vertical line from this peak position, you may get the natural frequency. Because it is a natural frequency curve, you may get the natural frequency. So it may be around 235 Hz. So that is the experimental value that is being get from the experiments. Okay, and I will show you then another frequency domain signal. So which is the outcome of the forced vibrations. That is the forcing frequency. So again, here you can find so many peaks, right? So here is, you can find a peaks. So when comparing all these peaks, so this point have the higher amplitude of 1.16 G. So at that point, the frequency value is found as 235.6 Hz. So previously the natural frequency is approximately 235 Hz. So here also we are getting 235 Hz, and for this experimentation the shaft is running at a speed of 13,650 RPM. So what does it mean? Here we can get the natural frequency as 235 in the previous curve, and then forcing frequency or harmonic frequency as 235 in this frequency domain signal, and then shaft is running at 13,650 RPM. So what does it mean? So that is, this 13,650 is the critical speed of this shaft. So therefore we should not run the shaft beyond this limit. Okay, so less than 13,000 is better, so that the system may have more lifetime. So that means it is a reliable one. So this is how we can interpret the experimental data. Okay. So if you want, there is no meaning in measuring natural frequency alone. So we have to measure both natural frequency and forcing frequency. Then only we can able to find the critical speed. Okay. So this is the simple outcome of a experimental setup. And next you can see with respect to the metal matrix composites, so the critical speed of a metal matrix composites. So here the different materials that are compared is the conventional metal mild steel, and then pure aluminium, and then aluminium reinforced with the hard ceramic particles, that is B4C boron carbide. So the percentages of boron carbide is varied from 3% to 12%. Now you can look at the results. So 3 results are available: numerical FEA, and then theoretical. So by using Euler-Bernoulli beam equations, and then experimental results. As in the previous slide we have saw now that experimental results. So here you can find the mild steel has a critical speed of 6650. So around 6,700, 6,300. And you can look at this aluminium. So the critical speed of aluminium is somewhat lesser than the mild steel. You can find in this case. And also theoretical, again it is less, but here you can see. So this aluminium has higher critical speed than the conventional one, but this is due to the error that may occur in the FEA procedure. Okay, normally it won't happen. So always the aluminium having a critical speed which is lesser than the mild steel. Okay, and look at the composites. Okay, in the composites you can find a maximum of 6,759 RPM. Even if you take theoretical results, it is the higher one, 6880, and in the numerical again it is the higher one. So 6994.8. So that means what does it mean? So if we reinforce 6% of boron carbide into the aluminium, we can increase the critical speed of the shaft. So therefore, the failure won't happen at the lower speeds. So this is one of the objective in which the metal matrix composites are preferred. So we need to increase the critical speed of the shafts. And the second important thing that we have to note from this outcome is, look at the weight. The mild steel shaft weighs 107.6 gram. Look at the weight of the aluminium and then composites. So 100% aluminium having a weight of 35.4. But look at these composites, which is of 35.1 to 33.9. So still these composites have lesser weight when compared to the pure aluminium and then mild steel. So normally when compared to mild steel, we can get up to 68 to 70% reduction in weight. So it is a huge number, no, in case of weight reduction. But look at the critical speed. Not only the critical speed will get increased, the damping property of the composite may also higher when compared to the conventional material, and also tripological properties and then mechanical properties are much more higher when compared to the pure aluminium and then mild steel. So this is the very big advantages of going for a metal matrix composites for various applications. Okay, so let us see the second objective. So our second objective is to monitor the crack in a drive shaft. So these are the different types of cracks that may occur in a drive shaft. Okay, so everything is normally due to a fatigue. So either it may be a low fatigue or a high fatigue. And one more thing is manufacturing defect. So manufacturing defect. So these are the two reasons which are responsible for the presence of crack in a drive shaft. First, you can see the transverse crack, and then crack due to tensile load, torsional load, and then thermal load, and then symmetric crack. So here, which one is occur frequently? This transverse crack. Because as I already said, if the critical, why the critical speed is occur means if the material distribution along the shaft is not uniform, then obviously the critical speed may occur. So that critical speed may try to pull the shaft towards outside. So that is, the centrifugal force may pull the shaft towards outside. So therefore, this kind of cracks may happen in the drive shaft. So this is a crack which is frequently happening. So others are less frequent and then rare. So the percentage is less than 5%, these types of crack. So this contributes to 95% of failure. So we have to reduce this transverse crack. So reduce means we can't able to reduce, but we can find the initiation of a crack while doing a condition monitoring process, right? So if condition monitoring is not employed, then what will happen? The crack will form and it will get propagated, and finally it leads to failure of the component. But once if we adopt a condition monitoring technique, then we can find the presence of a crack or initiation of a crack. So how we can find the initiation of a crack? So let us see one by one. Before that, I would share two more points. The first point is the transverse crack depth will affect the vibration process. So that means the depth of crack and then location of crack. So these are the two parameters which are considered with respect to the transverse crack. So depth of crack and then location of crack. Okay. So how we can judge whether the crack has been initiated or not? So only with the help of variation in the frequency values. For example, under normal conditions, that means if the shaft is having no flaw, then we may get a natural frequency of 95 Hz. So for example, I am telling, if a crack starts initiating towards the transverse direction, then our natural frequency may reduce to 90, 85, and then 80, depends upon the propagation of the crack. So this reduction in natural frequency represents the initiation of a crack in the shafts. So therefore, we have to take some precautions to avoid the failure. Okay. So here you can see results plotted between crack depth and then natural frequency. Okay. So here, if the crack depth increases, so the natural frequency is automatically getting decreased. So if there is no crack, we can get a natural frequency of around 483.27, something like that. So this much hertz we may get when there is no crack. And if the crack depth of 6 mm means, then we will get a natural frequency of around 483.02. Okay. So here 483.02. So under some cases, there may be a huge reduction in the natural frequency value. So once the natural frequency got reduced, then what will happen? Even though when the forcing frequency is low, at some point of time, both will get equalized. So therefore, the condition of resonance will occur. Ultimately, the component will get failed. So therefore, we should be cautious that we, at any cost, any part of time, we should not reduce this natural frequency values. Always it should be in the higher mode. Okay. And you can see one more variable. So this is with respect to the crack location. Okay. So crack location in the sense, for example, if this is a shaft and if this side is being an input, then this distance is measured from here. For example, initially we are taking 25 mm distance from here and 275 mm from here and then 525 mm from here. So here again you can find the crack location distance is increased, then you can get the very low natural frequency. For minimum distance, that is C equal to 25, you may get somewhat higher frequency. Once the crack location distance starts increasing, the natural frequency got decreased. So these are the factors which are considered in the transverse crack. Okay, so crack depth and then crack location. Okay, so next thing is with respect to the amplitude. So as I already said, if the crack happened in a drive shaft, then the amplitude of the vibration will be enormous. Here you can see if there is a no crack. Okay, so that is the shaft without failure. We can get an amplitude of 4 into 10 power minus 3. So this portion. So if the crack depth increases, what will happen? So the amplitude is increasing. So for example, if crack depth of 2 mm exists, then the amplitude will be this one. And if it is 6 mm, again this one. If you increase to another 8 mm or another 10 mm, the amplitude is getting increased. Okay, so even though the frequency is constant, here you can see there is no variation in the frequency, but amplitude is getting increased. So we have to reduce the value of amplitude to avoid the failure. Okay, so by adopting a condition monitoring technique, we can monitor the vibration pattern, right? So initially no crack, we are having a pattern like this. So during condition monitoring, if a pattern coming like this means automatically we can identify some kind of crack has been initiated in the drive shaft. So that means these variation in the patterns are the indicative of the fault in the rotating machineries. Okay, so this is about the second objective of adopting condition monitoring technique. And then the last thing is the typological performance of a composites. So with respect to the drive shaft, the importance is not given to the typological performance, right? Because more important is given to the previous case, critical speed and then transverse crack. But however, as we know, all the parts are moving with relative to some other parts. So if there is a contact exists between two parts, again the vibration, the typological aspects may comes into the picture. Okay, so you can see starting from bearing, gear, machining, and then even the hip joints. So everywhere this typological plays a vital role. So, as you know, the typology deals with the study of friction, wear, and lubrication between the interacting surfaces. Okay, so normally what is the outcome of the typology? So nothing. The loss is the outcome of the typology. So that means the energy get dissipated and the materials get deteriorated. So deteriorate in the sense the material is getting removed. So why this removal of material and energy dissipation happen means it is based on the surface of the components. Okay, now you can see the surface of the component. So if you look at in your naked eye, so every surface will looks like a smoother one. But if you take a scanning electron microscope images or transmission electron microscope images, you can see huge up and downs. So these are called the asperities. You can see more asperities because it is very, very difficult to have a very smoother surfaces, right? In the case of metals. So definitely there will be some kind of asperities are there. Now assume that this top portion is moving towards right with respect to this one. So this is being fixed. You can assume that. Now what will happen? So here at this location, here, everywhere, so some kind of mechanical interlocking may happen. So this mechanical interlocking ultimately results in the removal of a material. And moreover, for example, if you are pulling this part by applying a load of 100 Newton, then due to this mechanical interlocking, some kind of energy loss will be there. For example, if you are applying 100 Newton means it should travel with the velocity of 10 meter per second means it won't be 10 meter second, 10 meter per second. It will be a 5 meter per second or less than that. Okay, so whenever we are dealing with the moving parts of a metal, we have to concentrate on the tripology as well. And so one of the beautiful thing is this friction is called as a necessary evil. Why it is called as necessary and why it is called as evil? Because for some application we need friction, but for some application we don't want friction. So we won't say that friction is a completely unwanted thing. Okay, so look at an example. So we are walking in a road or a floor, whatever it may be. If no friction exists between our shoes and then road, what will happen? Automatically we will get slip. So in this application or in this process, we need a friction. And look at the another example. So here one guy is trying to pull a load or a wooden box, something like that. So here you can see two surfaces. This is surface 1 and this is surface 2, and there is a contact between surface 1 and then 2. The contact may be a surface contact. So due to friction between surface 1 and 2, so he has to apply more amount of force in order to overcome this frictional load. Then only the object will get moved towards right. Okay. So in this case, we don't want the friction. So therefore, as far as this application or this work is concerned, the friction is called as an evil. Okay. And then, so the well understanding of science of tripology. So very important, science of tripology is much needed in improving the reliability of any machine component and then system. So science of tripology is very simple. It refers the wear mechanisms. Okay, so wear mechanisms like, so what about the tripochemical reactions happen between two surfaces? What about the adhesion property between the two surfaces? For example, if the two surfaces may have good adhesion bonding, then what will happen? Ultimately, there will be more wear. And then abrasions. So these are the different mechanisms that we have to understood while dealing with the moving parts. So normally in our mechanical applications, we have to reduce the friction. So therefore, the understanding of wear mechanism is very, very important. That too in the composites. So here a survey says that the wear and the frictional losses can extend up to 63% of total cost incurred by the industries around the world. So normally what will happen if a component is worn out due to friction and wear, so we have to replace that component. So therefore, the industries are spending around 63% of the total cost of a machine around the world. So this is the outcome from a survey recently. So therefore, we have to take care of the tripological properties. So as far as the drive shaft is concerned, we can able to measure the friction and wear only with the help of weight loss. Okay, so based on the weight loss, we can say whether a frictional or wear may happen or not. Okay, for example, initially the weight of the drive shaft is 100 grams. So after running for a certain period, again you can put a weight. So if it goes less than 100 grams, then you can say, so some kind of wear exists between the rotational part. So that is the kind of thing that we can apply for the drive shafts. Okay, but during design stage, we can measure the friction and wear characteristics of the material that we are going to use to produce the drive shafts. So in the situation, we can use different types of experimental facility available to check the friction and wear characteristics of the composite materials. But once if you made the drive shaft, then you can't able to use these types of tribometers. Only thing is you can check with the weight loss. Okay, So during design stage, you can use these type of tribometers to check the friction and wear characteristics. Okay. So normally people may use pin and disc facility, and then sometimes they may use erosion tester. So these are the things that we are frequently used. Erosion tester, in the sense they will use some kind of hard abrasive particles, and then they have made to move along the specimens so that they will get some weight loss. Okay. And then basic tribo system. So as I already said, if we are having a body 1 and a body 2 is here, and you are applying load in the transverse direction, then what will happen? So these asperities comes in mechanical contact with the asperities present in the body 2. And then if you start pushing this body in this towards left, and if you are trying to push or pull this body towards the right direction, then what will happen? We will get the friction and then wear. Okay, so this can be reduced by filling the asperities with the lubrication. So here you can see the interacting surfaces. So by providing lubrication, we can reduce the friction and wear losses to some extent. So it is not possible to a maximum extent. To some extent we can use. Okay, so these are the key parameters that are considered in the tribological properties. So effect of applied load, sliding distance, sliding velocity. For example, sliding velocity, in the sense it depends upon the force that we are applying, and sliding distance in the sense, so how much distance that we are moving one part with relation to the another part. And then effect of contact condition, whether it may be a dry contact or a wet contact. So if you are using a lubricant, then automatically it will come under the category of wet contact. If no lubrication is there, then it can be said to be a dry contact. So under dry contact condition, the wear will be more. Okay, so that is the basic thing. And then effect of surface roughness. If the surface roughness is more, again the friction and then wear will be more. Okay, so these are the parameters that we have to concentrate while dealing with the tribological aspects. Okay, so the tribological performance of a polymer or metal. So both are same. So polymer or metal-based composites are influenced by reinforcement variables. So reinforcement variables in the sense dimensions of reinforcement, shape of reinforcements. Okay, so dimension in the sense it may be a cross-sectional dimensions or a lengthwise dimension. Okay, so these are the two factors which affects the tribological properties. And then next factor is bonding between the components of composites. So as I already mentioned in the previous case itself. And finally the test parameters. So test parameters that I have mentioned in the previous slide itself. So it is the sliding distance, sliding speed, sliding velocity, applied load, and then contact condition. So these are the test parameters that we can alter, right? So by altering that, we can study the influence of tribological performance of a metal matrix composites. So normally these are the two outcomes of a tribological properties, right? The first outcome is the specific wear rate, and then next thing is the coefficient of friction. So these two are affected by the mass. Delta M represents the difference in the mass. So initial mass and then final mass. Okay. So if the mass difference is less, then the wear rate is less. If the difference is more, automatically the wear rate will also be more. And also coefficient of friction. So this coefficient of friction is affected by this applied load. So if you apply more load, then what will happen? The coefficient of friction will be less. Okay. So these are the two outcomes of a tribological testings. And then here you can see a research work carried out on a aluminum metal matrix composites, and then the erosion type tribometer is used to study the friction and wear characteristics. Okay, now you can some kind of optimization techniques was adopted. So L16 Takuji method. Okay, here the impact velocity. So that is the impact velocity means how much velocity the abrasive particles are moving. So that is varied as 35, 45, 55, and then 65. So 4 variations have been considered, and similarly the filler weight. Okay, the filler weight again 0, 3, 6, and then 9. Okay, so 4 filler weight have been considered, and then look at the erosion rate. So if we reinforce 9 weight percentage of the filler, then the erosion rate is very minimum. So that is 33.540 milligram per kilogram. And if there is no reinforcement, if we are using a raw material, then the wear rate will be very much high, around 145. Now you can see the difference between these two. So this shows the effect of adding filler into the metal matrices. Okay, so similar cases for all the impact velocity conditions. This is for 35. If you look at the impact when the impact velocity is 45, here also you can get for no filler it is 194. By using 9% of filler it is 103. Okay, so similarly for 55, 9 will give the best results, and for 65 meter per second also the 9% has given the best results. So here only best results are taken and then tabulated. Here further the filler content is increased to 12%. So at that point for 35 condition, so the 35.540 milligram per kilogram is increased to 40.2 milligram per kilogram. So that means there is no effect in adding the filler content beyond 90%. So therefore we can say that 90% is a optimum condition. Okay, so why this reduction at a higher filler percentage is happening means this is due to the wide agglomeration of the filler content. So that means, for example, if you take a shaft like this, if we use a more amount of filler content, so at some places it will get agglomerated. So in that places the bonding between the matrix material and the filler is not that much good. So therefore this point some kind of failure may happen. So that's why at higher filler percentage the erosion rate will be maximum. Okay, so in this way we have to optimize the filler content if we are using a new material. And one more thing you can see, so if we use a filler content of 9%, the hardness value will be higher when compared to the other. So yes, we can say from this results, if the hardness of the material is more means, then the wear will be automatically reduced. Okay. So normally these two properties are related, that is tribology and hardness. So these are the two properties which are having relation with each other. And similarly the signal to noise ratio is obtained. Here also you can see there are different factors considered, like impact velocity, standoff distance. So that is the distance from which the particles are accelerated, and then eroded temperature, and then impingement angle. So the angle at which the abrasive particles are flowed, and then alumina content. So alumina is nothing but a filler or a reinforcement. Here you can after obtaining the delta values, you can find the impact velocity contributes more. So obviously it will happen because we are using an impact kind of tribometer. So obviously that impact velocity will affect. So there is no other possibilities. Okay. So always if you use an impact kind of tribological test, it will be the rank 1. But however, here you can see the filler contributes next to the impact velocity. So the delta value is around 7.63. So therefore, from this, what we can infer is the filler weight content has a significant effect on the tripological properties of the composites. So therefore, we have to choose an optimum filler and also right filler material. So, and then in one more studies you can find here they have measured the wear rate as well as the coefficient of friction with respect to the variation in the volume fraction of a graphite. So somebody may use the term volume fraction or somebody may use the weight fraction. Okay, so if the weight fraction is increased, automatically the wear rate is getting reduced. So similarly, if the filler content is increased, the coefficient of friction is also getting reduced. Because, for example, I am having a pure aluminum, right? This is considered as one case, and in another case, I am having composites, so which is reinforced with a graphite or a silicon carbide, whatever it is. Now, I am placing this composite sample in a plain surface. So plain means plain rough surface, and now I am trying to move this aluminum matrix, right? Now, what will happen? So aluminum has very low hardness, so therefore it will get more wear at this contact surfaces. But look at this case again. This is aluminum metal matrix composites. I am trying to move along the plane surfaces. Now, due to the presence of this hard materials, normally a silicon carbide or boron carbide, whatever it is, it supports the matrix so that it won't get that much wear at this portion. So this is the mechanism behind using a reinforcement in the composite material. So that means the reinforcement supports the matrix from the occurrence of wear. So that's why the increase in filler rate will reduce the friction and then wear. Okay. So then coming to the summary. So the behavior of reinforcements influenced more on the reliability of composites. Yes, of course. So the behavior of reinforcement in the sense, the type of reinforcement that we are using or type of material that we are using as a reinforcement will definitely affect the reliability of a composite material. For example, instead of using silicon carbide or molybdenum in the aluminum, if we are using copper, what will happen? So nothing will happen. The properties will be same as the aluminum. So therefore, the behavior of reinforcements influence more on the properties or reliability of the composite shafts or a material. And the next thing is the fundamental natural frequency of drive shaft could be increased by using optimum weight percentage of reinforcements. So that we have to identify. So why I am concentrating or stressing on this fundamental natural frequencies. Hope you are aware what is the meaning of fundamental natural frequency. So that is the, for example, if you have a mode shape like this, the first natural frequency is called as the fundamental natural frequency. For any system, it is better to have a higher fundamental natural frequency in order to avoid the condition so-called resonance. So that we can done by using optimum weight percentage of the reinforcements. And the next thing is the variation in vibration pattern is the indicative of cracks in the shaft. For example, if you are measuring a vibration pattern, so initially natural frequency will be like this. If the natural frequency starts decreasing, then it is the indicative of a crack. And even though you can find this flaws by using amplitude curve also. So initially, if there is a crack-free operation, the amplitude will be like this. If some kind of crack exists, then the amplitude is getting increased. So based on these patterns, you can identify the presence of a crack in the shafts. And then the addition of reinforcements reduced the wear rate of the drive shaft. So this is the general point. This may happen to all the composites, provided if the reinforcement is harder and stronger than the matrix material. used. Okay. So with this, I will stop my presentation. So if you have any queries or suggestions, can ask. I will try to answer.
Yes, you are given a very nice presentation on composite drive shaft.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Um, Participants, you have any question? Raise, it is a new area. Sir, one question is
Yeah,
asked in
how to
the
decide
chat box.
amount of reinforcement in general? What are the parameters to be considered before choosing? So the amount of reinforcement, we can't able to decide the optimum percentage of the reinforcement initially, Mr. Dr. Bharani Raj sir. So we have to decide, or we have to identify the optimum percentage by using multiple quantity of weight percentage. For example, starting from 0 to 10, 20, up to normally it won't go beyond 20. So within that we have to decide by having multiple iterations. And the parameters to be considered before choosing is only one parameter. Obviously, it should be harder than the base material, that is matrix material. So we can't able to decide the amount of reinforcement initially. That we have to choose multiple weight content values, then only we can able to decide the amount of reinforcements.
One more doubt, sir.
Yeah.
What method do we choose to fabricate the composite material here for a drive shaft, whether it is a powder metallurgy technique or a strip casting technique? Because the method of preparation also does matter on the reinforcement.
Of course. The method may influence the properties of the drive shaft. Normally, we can use squeeze casting method. So many literature suggested that the squeeze casting method may give the better results.
But is it possible to fabricate such a long drive shaft?
No. It is not possible to produce that much big drive shaft. You have to scale down the drive shaft, and then you can able to fabricate.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, any more clarification required, please?
Yes, sir. I have one more doubt, sir.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Just a clarification.
Yeah.
Whether it is feasible for long whiskers or long fibers or short fibers will give more strength to the system. For the composite material there.
If we are dealing with vibration alone, then the long fibers may give the better results. So if we consider the typology as the major one, then we can use the short fibers as well. Because having a long fiber in the typology has no meaning, because we are having a limited surface in contact with the some other part. So there won't be the length of the fiber or reinforcement won't have that much effect in the typological aspects. But as far as vibration is concerned, the length will play a vital role.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, how about any powder metallurgy technique that can be applied here, sir?
Yeah, powder metallurgy technique can also be applied, but in that case, you have to use the reinforcement at in nano levels. Then only the powder metallurgy will give you better results.
As we have studied powders will give much more strength. No, sir.
Of course. That much strength you can get in the powder metallurgy. But the thing is, the reinforcement size should be very, very minimum. Then only that method will give an effective results.
Yeah, if we go for nanomaterials, then it will be much feasible.
Yeah, of course. Powder metallurgy will be an excellent technique which offers better properties for nano kind of things.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
For Bellani, one more thing I want to say here. Normally, the powder metallurgy techniques can be used for the smaller component only, because the compacting pressure required for larger component is too much high, too very high. So the press required for manufacturing a shaft is a matter of thing. So therefore, the drive shaft, I don't know whether they can be possible to manufacture by powder metallurgy, but it is a nanoparticles. As said Dr. Rajesh Kumar, it is very.
Sir, yes, sir. You right. Yes, you rightly said. If we are scaled down the model, then we can able to use the powder metallurgy technique. But
Yeah.
for the entire complete thing, it is very difficult to use
Yeah.
the powder metallurgy technique.
Because mostly the drive shaft may be having a length of more than a meter or sometimes two also.
Yeah.
So in that case, the mini scale model is good.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Then one more question: how the composites are helpful in preparing blends of fluid? Uh, so actually, the thing is, the composites won't help you that much in preparing blends of fluid. So that means I hope the participant is asking about the nanofluids. So it won't help that much. Yeah.
Yes, any more questions, sir? Yes, no more means we will wind the session.
Yeah.
Before that, I thank Dr. Rajesh Kumar for giving a detailed introduction about the composite drive shaft, which is a new area. Most of the people are nowadays working to reduce the weight of the drive shaft, and also he has given from the basic knowledge of this drive shaft and what are the problems they are facing, how the crack is propagated, and how the Takuchi method is incorporated into this drive shaft design, so that you can get a optimum design of the particle size and other things. So really, I thank Dr. Rajesh Kumar for giving a wonderful lecture for this Atal Faculty Development Program. I once again thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, sir.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for patient listening. Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.